1, 2, 3, 4. Those are numbers, but you already knew that. If you want to know what number you're going to pay each month for your car, use Kelley Blue Book My Wallet on Auto Trader. They're really good at numbers. Auto Trader.
And hello, welcome to Unequal Sequel. My name is Dave, and I'm one of your two hosts of this blistering podcast.
And I'm Rich, and I'm the other host of this blistering podcast. Think of me as Billy to Dave's Gizmo. He's small and cute and fuzzy, and I never feed him after midnight. Think of me as Superman to Dave's Lex Luthor. I'm a man of steel, and he's rapidly balding. Think of me as Hardy to Dave's Laurel, because we both look great in bowler hats. Think of me as Bruce the Shark to Dave's Sheriff Brody. I'm always breaking down and not doing my job properly, and he's got a lovely tan.
Lovely. The premise of Unequal Sequel is very simple. We ask our guests for their best ever sequel, worst ever sequel, and finally their dream sequel.
And of course, we quite often drift off and talk about other things, sometimes movie related, sometimes just life in general.
We should also point out we do love spoilers. So once in a while, we talk about a film and we do spoil it. So if you haven't seen a film we mention, just go and cut the grass for a minute and then come back. We do have a quick question just to warm up your mind that we always ask every guest. And it is, what is the first sequel you got excited about? Do you remember that?
Oh, I think it's probably the same as a lot of people. Empire Strikes Back. That was the age I was. I was 7 when Star Wars came out. Absolutely blew my mind. So in fact, Empire Strikes Back, I was so excited. I actually read I'm pretty sure the book version came out first. And I remember reading that. So all that kind of I am your father thing was actually a bit spoiled for me. And I've now just spoiled it for the one person out there who's not seen Star Wars. But yeah, so that was it, definitely Empire Strikes Back. And it did not, I hate sequels that don't end. Finish the movie. Give us a movie with a beginning, a middle, and end. Don't just fluff us for the third one. That really annoyed me about Dune recently. I was just like, oh, come on. You've stopped halfway through. So yeah, I think more and more I get irritated by Empire because it doesn't end properly.
But you didn't have that problem when you were 7 though, did you?
No. I was just like, man, he's got his hand cut off. How's he going to fight with one hand? That was basically it. That was my thing. And oh no, Han Solo's dead and he's the cool guy, and then I was just really confused with, did he kiss the sister? And I was like, yeah, even though I'm only 7, I know that's a bit weird. even on the east coast of Scotland where people marry their sisters.
So at that point, as you watched Star Wars, you knew what was going on. You were all up to date.
I've watched Star Wars about 8 times in the cinema. I mean, I went. I think there was one time I watched it like on a Saturday and a Sunday. It was the first movie that I was completely obsessed with, and it was really interesting when I've kept meeting people throughout my career who were as obsessed. I remember when Ash became one of my favorite bands ever because they had that debut album called 1977 that opened with the Star Wars sound effects. Yeah. I remember when I finally got to interview them and met them, and we just talked about Star Wars, and you just realize it was such a touchstone for an entire generation.
You know what? I do remember. It just came in a vision. I remember being so excited for Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
This is brilliant.
I remember because I am also one that loves the first one. Like, even though it wasn't the R-rated one I deserved as a child, I was so very satisfied with the build of what could have been a great franchise. And then I remember seeing I remember being with my mother in a movie theater, and this is where, YouTube is not readily available for you to watch a trailer. And it was the only time in my life that I remember a trailer coming on and my mom turning to me and was happy for me and said, I will take you to go see that movie, because Mortal Kombat Annihilation was on there. And I saw Cyrax and I was dying, and Jax. And I was like, oh my God, it's my movie. And then we went to see it. And then I haven't been the same since. I have PTSD now.
Is that the sequel that, correct me if I'm wrong, they pretty much run out of money towards the end of it and the studio just put it out?
I mean, it looks like that's what happened. I don't know the story behind it. But yeah, I think there was a slash in budget somewhere in there. I think I remember reading something like that, but it's a really messy sequel with the worst special effects by 90s standards, by 50s standards. It's pretty horrific. But yeah, that was the first one. It came to mind just now when you asked me that.
Well, mine's actually a Disney film as well.
Of course.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to end up flexing a little bit on the cinema front. I don't know how excited I was at the age of 4 going to see Toy Story 2, but I know my dad was unbelievably excited and took me to I don't know which cinema in Leicester Square, but we went to one in Leicester Square.
Wow.
And he was absolutely fuming with me when I fell asleep within 5 minutes. In my defense, I was 4 or 5 years old, and it'd been a long day. It was in the evening. So, but I imagine that at that age, I was very excited to see Toy Story 2. I'm sure because my dad basically imprinted all of his favourite films onto me. So if he was taking me all the way to Leicester Square to see Toy Story 2, I'm sure there must have been excitement in that household. But I do also remember going to see Fantasia 2000 as well. We went to see that at the BFI IMAX, which was just an unreal experience. Impressive. So I would have been about 6 at that point. So you can imagine this tiny little girl in this IMAX screen with all these pretty colours and music was just, that was incredible as well.
That's so cool.
Remind me what happens in Fantasia 2000, because I have no clue.
So they still have the same, so they have different conceptual animation pieces based on different classical pieces of music, and they do have Sorcerer's Apprentice again, but they have other stuff. And I still my favorite piece of classical music is still to this day from that film. It's actually jazz, but it's Rhapsody in Blue. But
I knew you were going to say that the minute you were my favorite piece of music. I was like, there's Rhapsody in Blue.
I just have that whole sequence.
And how does that go?
Retinas and it goes. I'll get my flute out and I'll play it for you.
I prefer Fantasia 2000 to Fantasia. I think
do.
It's probably just because animations come on and so they're a bit more adventurous.
I honestly thought it was the same film. I never knew it was two different things.
Yeah, I think I definitely seen 2000 more because it was round about that time when DVD players were coming in, and it was one of the first DVDs that we hadn't because we'd seen it in the cinema. Whereas Fantasia, I think I had on VHS, probably watched it when I was a lot younger, but that was that was like, oh, this is my DVD that I own, not my dad kind of thing. So yeah, I definitely think I have a bias there, same as I have a bias for Toy Story 2 over Toy Story 1.
What is your best sequel today? Because it's a hard choice to make.
Well, this is quite a controversial choice, I think.
Yes, it is.
And slight caveat or caveats is that obviously this isn't the best sequel of all time. It's probably The Godfather Part 2 or The Empire Strikes Back. Honourable mentions to Terminator 2, Aliens, Toy Story 3, Silence of the Lambs, technically a sequel, also a masterpiece.
I'll allow it.
But what I figured was that a lot of people are either going to have already talked about some of these films or certainly will the more episodes you do.
You'd be surprised.
Well, have people not covered those already?
Nobody has mentioned The Godfather Part 2 yet.
Or no one's picked Empire Strikes Back yet either, as their best.
Oh my God. Literally my favourite too. And I just thought, I haven't got time to listen to every single episode. I don't want to reach out. Well, okay. Now I'm sat here telling your listeners that the best sequel is Young Guns 2, and I feel like a complete idiot. Obviously, it's The Godfather Part 2, guys. Obviously, and Empire Strikes Back. However, for this...
But to you...
But to me, there was a period when I was younger. No, so this is sort of pre-peak 93 to 99. This is when I was still kind of hiring VHSs from the local store, pre-Blockbuster on the Isle of Wight, because we were sort of late to adopt. So these were still the local kind of mum and pop video stores where you'd go in and you'd basically be faced with the choice of some Steven Seagal actioner like Nico or Hard to Kill or like License to Blow, whatever nonsense it was called. For a little while, there was sort of Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah. Yeah, that's the X-rated one. But then I remember hiring Young Guns 2 out with my mate and watching it, and it genuinely blew my mind. Because I had never seen a Western before, or certainly not from memory, like perhaps some kind of old like John Wayne, John Ford Westerns around my nan and granddad's as a kid, but they didn't resonate with me because, you know, you're 7, 8, 9 years old. Who gives a crap about some old John Ford Western? But this, it was just fun. It felt tonally unlike anything I'd ever seen. The action was good. For a 12-year-old, I'm not saying that now as a 41-year-old, but it was kind of witty, it was violent, it had a real kind of propulsion and momentum to it. And there was a period for about 2 years where me and my best friend at the time, it was our favourite film. We would just watch it endlessly. We would quote it endlessly. But the main reason I've picked it is because it was a kind of gateway film for me in that I now love Westerns. Like, Westerns are probably my favourite genre. Once Upon a Time in the West, The Wild Bunch, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, Unforgiven. Like, I absolutely love Westerns. And this film was probably the catalyst of that passion. It was the one that made me go away. And I didn't find those films until a few years later. You know, I would go and then watch sort of Tombstone, the first Young Guns, all the Westerns that followed. I love Tombstone. I could talk all day about Val Kilmer's performance in Tombstone. He's just in a different movie altogether. But this is a film that I think genuinely changed the sort of trajectory of my taste in films. So for me, it's kind of like, again, the best, used loosely, the best sequel for me, because it's probably the sequel that has had the most influence on my film tastes subsequently.
I like to think that you went to film school because of Young Guns 2.
Well, that and Goodfellas probably were the two lightning rods.
That's cool.
Yeah. When I watched Goodfellas for the first time, it genuinely was like, oh, right, this is cinema. I remember thinking, why is that so much better than anything else I've ever seen? And then sort of getting a Halliwell's film guide and poring over, who is this Scorsese guy? And like, what else has he done? But anyway, Goodfellas doesn't have a sequel.
Thank God.
Yeah, Young Guns 2 was a real fork in the road. I mean, had either of you guys seen it before I recommended it?
No.
Yeah, I had. A little bit like you. I wasn't really into Westerns as a kid, but my dad has always really liked Westerns. And so Young Guns and Young Guns 2 kind of become a movie we could all watch together, because my dad would like it and I'd like it. And then that sort of set us off then to watching things like The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, and then moving on to things like Dirty Harry and stuff that movies that my dad really liked. So yeah, it's got a little bit of a special place in my heart as well, Young Guns. But you'd not seen it before, Dave?
No, this is the first time.
What was your take? Was fresh eyes, Dave? Like, from the moment the score kicks in, after you sort of meet the old man, Brushy Bill Roberts, who's allegedly Billy the Kid, there's this sort of lovely moment where he's being interviewed by Brad Whitford, who then becomes Bradley Whitford of the West Wing fame and Get Out and stuff. Yeah, it's quite fun watching this film, seeing all of the faces who didn't have a career when this film came out. But suddenly you're like, oh, right, it's him. Oh, yeah, God, it's him. But the moment where he sort of sets up that little, the bookend of the film, and he goes, I think the line is like, you got any scars? And it pushes in on an aged Emilio Estevez's face. And it's sort of like sparkly blue eyes or remembering the past. And there's this cut of sort of over the head shot looking over a canyon, and Silvestri's score kicks in. I just had goosebumps remembering the music from that film.
Is it because you're a big John Bon Jovi fan?
I mean, I think this soundtrack's good. I'm not going to die on the John Bon Jovi hill, that's for sure.
Blaze of Glory is a fucking good track, by the way.
It is a good tune. Yeah.
Academy Award nominated Blaze of Glory.
Was it?
Yeah, it's an absolute banger. John Bon Jovi could be an Academy Award winner.
Wow.
Okay, a point of clarification. I don't think this is the best sequel ever made, but but it felt very on brand for me to just go like all Jaws. You ask me to come on, you give me free reign to pick films, and I personally think that Jaws 2 is not the best sequel ever made, but it is better than it has any right to be. And I quite often defend it. Maybe we'll get onto this. I have a way it could be better, for sure. And theories around how you could fix it as well. But I enjoy it quite a bit. I think because obviously having one of the main trio in Jaws 2 helps a great deal. Because we'll get onto some of the other sequels later, but the less resemblance they have to the original, the worse they get. So this at least does have my boy Roy Scheider in it. He doesn't really want to be there, but he got a lovely tan. So
Yeah.
I think I agree with you, actually. I had seen Jaws 2 before, but when I watched it again, I was like messaging Dave going, it's actually not bad. You know, it's all right. It's surprisingly good, in fact. Yeah.
People are
Very
surprised
passable.
when I tell them, like, because my love for Jaws is so well known. So when I tell people, I'm like, oh yeah, Jaws 2 is actually pretty good. They're like, okay, let's see.
The problem with Jaws 2 is that it follows Jaws 1, which is like pinnacle cinemas. I mean, it's god tier. It's very few films can beat it. It's one of the best films ever made. Compare it to some other films, it's very good.
Yeah.
Jaws 2. We used to have a question on some of our questions. We asked what film doesn't really need a sequel, and my go-to answer was always Jaws. But I think I'm going to change that now because I really enjoyed Jaws 2.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. I think the only thing that it was missing was that sprinkling of kind of Spielberg magic. You know, that's all it was really missing from taking it up a notch.
Yeah.
Because I think it had everything you needed in it.
Still has John Williams' score. Yeah, I still listen to it. Why do you like it, Sarah? Or why do you think we should like it?
I mean, expanding on the, you know, it is better than it has any right to be, because I think that's not sort of really speaking to the quality of the film as a film. You know, you can't compare it to Jaws. I kind of just have to, like, even though it obviously is carrying on the story somewhat, I have to distance it because I think it's just like apples and oranges, isn't it? Like you can't compare the two.
Yeah.
But my favorite character in Jaws changes daily, but I really, really like Brody as a character. I like that he is this everyman character, and he goes on such a journey in the first film to being like petrified of water, not even wanting to like go up to his ankles when, you know, they're getting the kids out of the ocean and stuff. Like he is terrified of it, and he goes on this huge journey in the first film to then being the hero at the end, and it's so satisfying. You know, we all know it, the great moment at the end of Jaws when he shoots the shark and it blows up. So I think that if it wasn't Brody in this film, I really wouldn't like it as much, because I'm just happy to see that he's doing okay for the most part. That he goes through it a little bit in this film, but I like that he is taken what happened to him in the first film and is now sort of able to cope a bit better. It's, you know, I think it's as soon as when they find like the orca, as in the animal, not the boat, like washed up on the beach, and he's like, it's a shark, like straight away. He is not kind of messing about this time. He's not uncertain. He doesn't need the experts. Like, you know, Matt Hooper can't come. He's unavailable. So it's all him this time. And it's like, he's really strong in his beliefs, and it leads to him making some mistakes. Like when he sees the shadows and thinks it's a shark and causes a bit of a scene. But I just like that it continues the development of him as a character and adds a bit more into it. And I also just love that Larry Vaughan, the mayor, has learned absolutely nothing. It's just because he has a moment in Jaws when he's like, my kids were on that beach, like my kids could have died. When you think like, something's getting through, like he's realizing like what a jerk he's been. And then you get to this and it's just like, he has learned nothing.
I mean,
absolutely
that's
nothing.
not like a politician, right?
What Evil Dead 2 was I'm saying was a lot, but you know, it's fine. You can just cut those out and just make my sentence seem nonsensical. So what Evil Dead 2 was we had video. What were they called? Video sales. So there would be like a traveling video sale would come to my hometown of Banbridge, and they would sell extra-rental video cassettes at the local nightclub. So on a Saturday morning, it would turn into these video fairs. That's what they were. They were video fairs. And so I went down armed with pocket money and with my dad, and we went around and we saw all the extra-rental video cassettes. And this was at the time when I was kind of seriously getting into film through things like Empire and Total Film didn't exist back then. The other film magazine didn't exist back then. Neon didn't exist back then. So it was mainly Empire that was giving me my and Starburst, magazines like that were, getting me into film. And so I remember going around this place and picking up like a bounty of stuff. Like X-Rental tapes back then were like 30, 40 quid to buy an X-Rental video. And this is before things came out in retail. And they were going here for like £5 a pop. And I had enough money to buy 5 or 6. And so I bought some titles I knew and I loved. Things like Lethal Weapon 2, there's another sequel for you. Things like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, there's another sequel for you. But my eyes lit upon Evil Dead 2, which I'd never seen, but which I had heard of through Jonathan Ross's Incredibly Strange Film Show, which if people don't know what that is, it was an extraordinary Channel 4 series. Ran for a couple of series, I think, in the 1980s. Hosted by Jonathan Ross, who is a massive film geek, and he spotlighted cult directors from around the world. And one of those cult directors was Sam Raimi. And so I watched this Sam Raimi documentary and an interview with Sam Raimi, and I was just blown away by the clips that I was seeing. Things like, I'd heard of The Evil Dead, but I don't think I'd seen it at that point because it was banned, because it was video nasty. I hadn't seen his second film, Crime Wave. So this would have been around about 1989, 1990. So it would have been probably just before Darkman comes out. And so I thought, this Evil Dead 2 looks like the business. So I saw it and I went, I want that. And I got it home and I watched it, and my life changed. It was incredible. I had never seen filmmaking like it before. I'd never seen a director as playful before. I'd never seen a director try things like Raimi tries in that movie before. And it was a come to Jesus moment for me. Except Jesus in this case was a bloke with a chainsaw on the end of his arm.
Yeah, which is not, if you're 8, 9 years old, 10 years old, what's not to love about a bloke with a chainsaw for an arm?
I mean, that's an upgrade on Jesus for me. That's a controversial statement to say, but John Lennon got away with it, so I think I could do as well.
I'm confused by Evil Dead 2. Does it ignore the first one, or is it supposed to be a recap of the first one, or what?
Or a remake because they had more money?
It's having its cake and eating it, and they do the same thing with Army of Darkness, the third movie, in that each Evil Dead movie directed by Sam Raimi remakes the previous movie in the first 2 minutes of the next movie. So they don't do that thing like the Planet of the Apes films do, or the Rocky films do, where the first 5 minutes is usually like just a previously on with stock footage, or not even stock footage, just footage from the last film. Raimi, I think it might have been driven by rights issues, but also I think he wanted to streamline the story a little bit. So Raimi wanted to basically start Evil Dead 2 where the Evil Dead ends. So the Evil Dead ends with the now famous POV shot of the evil, which is always seen from the evil's POV, this creeping, crawling camera going through the forest and then through this cabin. So the Evil Dead, it goes through the cabin and emerges the other side of the cabin. Bruce Campbell, who's the sole survivor, as Ash in the first movie, turns around, screams at the camera, goes right up to his face, cut to black. That's the end of the Evil Dead. And then for Evil Dead 2, he basically, as you saw this morning, he picks it up from that exact point with this deranged, incredible shot where it picks him up, flies him through the air, smacks him against trees, which were actually manipulated by Sam Raimi himself, smacking Bruce Campbell, who's like one of his oldest friends, in the face, scratches his eyes, scratches his hands, and then thumps into a tree, falls down into a puddle, gets possessed, and we're off to the races. So he wanted to do that. I think he wanted to streamline it so that there was a focus on just one other character with Ash rather than 4 other characters with Ash. So we see his girlfriend Linda get possessed, get killed, and then again we're off to the races. So I think that's partly what he wanted to do.
Okay.
My favourite sequel would have to be Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Brilliant choice.
Great choice.
It's just, I don't know if this has been talked about on here before, but just the caliber of actors that were in it. Like the guy who played Khan, I can't remember. I can never remember his name.
Ricardo
Montalban, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the fella. Just an epic. That role just escalated him. He just became just massive. This dude, the guy from Fantasy Island, just became one of the best cinema villains ever. And because I remember going to see the first Star Trek movie, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and now, you know, because we were all familiar, we all loved the TV show. The TV show when I was a kid, even though that came out in like 1966. So I was born in 72. So, you know, I would have seen the reruns, but it was just always on, constantly on. My brother and I had the action figures. My brother had Mr. Spock and I had a Klingon. And then later on, we had Captain Kirk and we had, you know, and they were just, you know, I mean, looking at the figures now, they're shit, but...
Would you class yourself as a Trekkie then?
No, I wouldn't class myself as a Trekkie because I haven't seen the later programs. I saw the Picard era, saw bits of that, but I do love the movies of Star Trek. And what makes me laugh is that, you know, what makes me laugh is that in this one, you know, the biggest shock of all was Spock dying.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the cinema just blubbing, just crying my eyes out. And I was with my mates as well, and they were all going, "Oh, what are you crying about? What are you crying about?" But they were crying as well. Like, "Oh, stop being, what's wrong with you? Such a girl," right? But that bit when he just puts his hand on the glass and he just says, I am and will forever be your friend. Oh my God, just cry my eyes out. Then they spent the next 10 films finding him, losing him. Just, like, you're ruining it now. It's like, oh, there he is. No, he's not. He might be alive. I think he's dead. Is he a ghost? I don't know. And he's just... You know, and what I really love the reboot. I love the reboots that they've done with Chris Pine and Simon Pegg. They really did. I mean, you know, there's been some others that were great, but for me, The Wrath of Khan, because the motion picture took Star Trek that we knew and loved, and then it gave it an edge. There was a darkness. There was a lot of. It was very much like Alien, that sort of vibe, you know.
Yeah.
So the motion picture gave Star Trek an edge. It was really moody. Like, there was a lot of shots of the Enterprise just cruising through space, a lot of darkness. Whereas the program was a little bit more kind of. It was colourful. It was bubbly. You know, there was a bit of drama. Yeah. It was daft drama. There was like a lot of overacting. You know, like William Shatner.
Yeah, it was quite camp, wasn't it? It was like Batman.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
Like, you know.
Exactly. Whereas the motion picture just gave it an edge. So you know, Alien had come out. So I think a lot of films were influenced by that, the feeling of that, you know, like the density.
2001 Odyssey is a massive influence.
Oh, God, yeah.
On the original motion picture, isn't it? When they just float through a cloud for about 45 minutes.
How mad is the ending to 2001?
I still don't understand it, Rich. Can you explain it to me?
At the end, you're going, is this still going on? I don't know what's happening. Up to that point, you kind of go, yeah, I understand. And then you're like, what the fuck?
I get it, yeah.
What is this? You can't not watch it because everyone's seen it. So you want to be one of the people who go, yeah, I've seen that. You know, you can't be, because if you turn around and go, no, I haven't seen it, you just sound like you're being a dickhead. You're like, oh, it's a good view, is it? But the motion, Star Trek 2 had everything. They got it because I think the motion picture was a little bit too slow. There wasn't a lot. Yeah, not a lot happened.
Yeah.
It was a very atmospheric film. Like I say, that it really captured the density of space and the loneliness of being out in that vast emptiness, you know, not knowing really what's out there. But then The Wrath of Khan really ramped it up, and Ricardo was just spectacular.
What has been your most disappointing sequel?
So I'm going to, again, I think you may have talked about this film, but it's because it's so disappointing, I just want to bring more misery to the table again. So it's got to be Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
It's
just
absolutely ridiculous. As a kid, as much as I raved about being a Ghostbusters fan, the original Tim Burton Batman and Batman Returns, I think Batman, the original, is probably my favourite superhero film of all time. Even after all the Marvel stuff now and everything else, The Dark Knight, I think that, for me, stands at the top. I think it's just perfect. I really think the casting's great. It's dark. It's done really well. The Joker's fantastic. All the acting performances. But for some reason, they decided just to let somebody else have a go at it. And Batman and Robin is an abortion of a film. It's just, it's the worst thing I've ever seen. And it's Joel Schumacher. And he gave us Lost Boys and Falling Down. So I'm like, he should be all right. It's in safe hands. Lost Boys is probably one of my favourite vampire films ever.
So are you talking about Batman and Robin or Batman Forever?
Oh, is Batman and Robin not done by Joel Schumacher?
No, it is, but Batman Forever came first, then Batman. And
Oh, I'm going to go Batman and Robin because this is with Arnie, isn't it? And
yes,
yes,
and plus Batman Forever is good.
Well, the fact that I didn't bring it and I forgot about it, I just kind of let it go under the radar. I'm like,
I think
okay.
that's it. Batman Forever's
Jim Carrey going.
Oh, that was it. Yeah, he was on a lot of speed, I reckon.
But Batman and Robin is, yeah. At that point, you're still thinking, hey, it's Batman. It's got to be good, right? This is Batman. Look at this Batman. It's George Clooney.
And do you know what? George Clooney kind of left still with a kind of good name for himself. He's worked in good roles since, you know, and he lacked that darkness. He was too charming in this film.
He very publicly came out and said how much he hated it, and also refunded people who complained about it. Like from his own
I've got
pocket.
a really good quote here actually from him, where after they filmed it and he watched it and stuff, he said it was a very difficult film to be good in. I mean, that's how to sell your film. Like, available now.
So I was thinking about this. I would probably go with, I think the Bourne franchise died a death. I remember that one because it was the 3 good ones.
Yeah.
Then there was Legacy, which was this horrendous sidequel, reboot, spin-off, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's really strange.
God knows.
Died a death. It was awful. That's a bad movie. It's just straight up bad. And then they were going to come back. They said, "Oh, we're going to bring Matt Damon back, and we're going to do one more." And I think they just called it Jason Bourne. I think that's what it was called.
They did.
And I remember kind of thinking, all right, yeah, do you know, I'm up for this. I quite enjoyed the first 3. Hopefully they can kind of retcon some of the weird stuff that happened in the last one and just a good old action movie, you know, and it's Bourne, it's kind of fun. It's got that political intrigue. It's, you know, all this stuff going on. And the result was just boring. It was just really bland. I don't know if you guys remember seeing this film at all when it came out.
I don't think I watched it. I
watched it on a plane. And I can tell you, it's absolute. I can't remember anything.
It's a plain movie. It's a plain movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely
no,
right.
I can't remember anything. I remember he's in it. Alicia Vikander's in it. Is Riz Ahmed in it?
Yes. He's like a tech guy of some sort.
He's like an Elon Musk. Because it's something to do with the internet or something.
It's something to do with, I think he has I think he's meant to be like a Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
I think he's a Mark Zuckerberg type, and it's meant to be like the CIA are trying to like hack this site and use it to spy on people, which they already do. But it was like they're trying to make it like this plot point, and everyone sat in the cinema going, yeah, we know this isn't shocking or scary. This is just life. And then, like you say, Alicia Vikander's in it with a weird Irish accent, I seem to recall, which was very on and off. I don't know why. And then Tommy Lee Jones is doing a Harrison Ford in that he doesn't want to be there, but is just quite clearly in for the paycheck. And then Matt Damon as well, he just seemed to be on autopilot for this movie. You know, it was weird. I remember the one thing that stood out to me, I don't know why these things stay in my brain, but they do. When the trailer first comes out, there's like a shot of him in somewhere like Romania doing like bare knuckle boxing.
Yeah.
And it's like quite a great shot of him just like squares up to one guy and it's like, bam, one punch, he's down. And it's, you know, front facing, like really well shot and choreographed. And you're like, oh, cool. In the movie, it's shot from a completely different angle. And I remember like in the movie, like waiting for that scene and going like, well, this scene was pretty good. I'll see this again on the big screen. And it just cuts to like somewhere in the crowd behind him. So it's all obscured. And you're like, but you have a front-facing show. What? I don't understand. Like what? And I think like that's the tone of the movie. It's like we have some good stuff in here. We have stuff that we can show you and will work and will be great. But for some reason, we're not going to use it. And that's just the movie. It's like you say, very forgettable. I can't really remember anything else that happens in it. I don't think it does anything for the wider story of the previous 3. I don't know if any of like Treadstone or any of that comes back up again. It's just weird. It's a film that didn't need Jason Bourne. It's like you could have just cast anyone else in this and just called it Action Man or like generic, I don't know, Jack Ryan, Jack Reacher, Jack Thomas or Jack whoever, another Jack, and it would have been fine.
You're sticking with Jack though.
Well, that's what they're all called apparently. So
because the first 3 are it's a pretty strong trilogy, like as far as 3
solid.
films go. It's up there.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking of like an action hero called Keith.
That's what it would be, yeah.
Keith Bourne.
Coming to you in the cinemas, Keith.
An accountant by day, superhero by night.
Yeah.
I still watch it. So what is your worst sequel ever then? Let's roll into it.
Sex and the City 2.
Oh, that's horrible.
Oh.
I mean, I just felt, I mean, the cringe. And I think because I had watched Sex and the City, it was targeted towards people like me. I'd watched the whole series. I really liked it, and
good.
I didn't really think about. I mean, let me give you this weird statistic that throughout Sex and the City, which ran for like over 100 episodes, 6 seasons, right? So well over 100 episodes.
Yeah, it's back when the days when seasons were like 25 episodes. And
really long seasons. So get this, there were a total of 3 people of color in the show's 6 seasons.
Wow.
Out of 95 to 108 different partners that these women had.
Wow.
So it was quite tone deaf, because New York City being, a very kind of multicultural city, like
massively,
that was quite shocking. And then to see, and even in that though, you saw some bits that I had liked. Samantha dates in one show, she dates a black man, and the sister kind of, there's this reverse racism happening, and she kind of berates her sister, and you see some moments that weren't tone deaf in those shows. And I felt like that the series didn't bug me so much that there weren't so many people of color in it, because it was about these 4 women, and we saw them and what they did. But this sequel was, it's like supposed to be proudly feminist, but it was just straight up Islamophobic, and kind of just everything that it set out to be, just reversed in this film.
I remember the first time I watched it, and Dave didn't watch it, and I kind of, when I'm watching movies, I'm sometimes messaging him, and I'm like, this is really racist. Like I can't believe it was like not a 90s movie. It's like what? It's horrible. It's really awful.
Yes.
This viewing, I was blessed that this was my first ever viewing of Sex and the City 2, and it will be my last. I'm never watching this shit again.
Please don't watch it. Save your time and energy.
And I've read a lot about it. I've seen the Mark Commode rant, and I watched it again today, and I think he nails it. And I thought it can't be as bad as everyone tells me it is. And then I checked the runtime, and I thought, whoa, it's over 2.5 hours.
It's long. Yeah.
Not a lot happens. It's just
not a lot happens. It's basically the same women doing the same things. They put them in Abu Dhabi, supposedly, and they assume that Abu Dhabi, they assume a lot about the women of Abu Dhabi. And it's really interesting, because you think, when you look at the amount of young women who fall pregnant in, teenage pregnancies in America, yet these women are judging the Emiratis for being that, and you're just thinking, whoa, what is going on here? And that the scene with the hookah, I mean, I don't know whether that was just, I think Dave just threw up in his mouth a little bit there, thinking.
As soon as they land in Abu Dhabi, it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't even describe.
Horrible.
It is horrible.
Yeah.
I like you. I've watched a fair bit of Sex and the City in my time. Like, I don't remember the characters being this horrible.
Yes.
And well, just a bunch of dickheads, really, in every way. And they don't learn anything in the movie.
They don't. They really don't. Because obviously, it comes to the final bit, and it's like, everybody hates Americans is what they kind of gave us as the kind of culmination of this horrible, horrible film. And we thought, well, they would if you all behaved like that.
Well, yeah. Quite rightly, it would seem.
Highlander did well as a film. They had a good cast. They had a good soundtrack.
A very good soundtrack,
But the whole premise of Highlander, it's on the bloody cover, guys. There can be only one. They get it down to one. Instead of going, hey, we want more Highlander films. How do we do that? Well, they are immortal and we do have the whole of time. Maybe we should look back to another era and set it when there's a lot more immortals, and maybe there's some sort of event akin to The Gathering. Maybe we should go back and do that. Or we could go forward, set it in a dystopian future, have them be aliens, have more aliens arrive, and because the aliens arrived, they reenact the old immortal mechanism. That's great. How are we going to skim that? How are we going to sell that to people? Old man Conor McLeod falls asleep at the opera, and Sean Connery just comes on a voiceover and goes, "Remember the planet Zeiss, McLeod." And you're like, the what? Is that? Did I miss that in the first film, where we were rebellions together? Oh no, I didn't miss it. They're literally going to another planet, and they're clearly like the film June. Like that's it. It's mad.
And it's the laziest name for a planet. Zeist.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me. How does that work in the timeline of Highlander, Matt?
It doesn't.
It doesn't. There can be only one. There's one, but there's another planet. Also, like they suddenly decide that the amount of times they quote Queen, but for one line, they literally about 4 of them go, "It's a kind of magic," and essentially,
oh God, I hate it so much.
Essentially, wink to camera, and you just go, "Fuck you!" Actually, fuck you. They've got like, he
does it once in the first one, and it really grated on me. And then they do it 4 times in this one, and I was like, if I didn't have to watch it for this podcast, I would have turned it off.
The only thing that keeps me glued to the thing is Sean Connery just looks like he doesn't give a fuck.
He's having the best time, isn't
This
he?
is his Jaws 4 in terms of Michael Caine, how he was in Jaws 4. He doesn't care. And again, going back to their first law, the whole joke about Sean Connery was he was a Scotsman who was a Spaniard who was clearly Scottish. In that one, they go, "Oh, well, let's just have him come back in Scotland." Okay, I get that because that's where he died. Yeah, but every time it's on screen, we'll play bagpipes. Okay. Also, he's magic now. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, he can pay for clothes with an earring. I don't think anyone's going to accept an earring for clothing. And then there's a whole scene missing. Sure, he paid for the flight with his one earring. His suit. How did he pay for his flight? How did he figure out? That is the film. If Highlander 2, someone said to me, "This is what we're doing." Okay, so the film leads up to Sean Connery going to the airport and figuring out an airport. I would watch the shit out of that film. Doesn't have a passport, obviously. He doesn't have money. He has no idea how a plane works. It's the 80s, man. It's not the 50s where you can just buy a ticket. He has to go through customs. What is going on in that airport that they cut out? Oh, it's the future, man. We blotted out the sun like Mr. Burns. Did you? Oh, why? Because it's the 80s and we're talking about the ozone layer. Great. It's an eco film. This is one of those films that on paper is amazing. If you made this film and didn't attach it to the Highlander franchise, great. It's a film about an old guy who saves the world, turns into a dystopian future. You find out he's an alien. Other aliens come, rejuvenate him, and it's just weird as fuck. I'd be like, this is the most cult film ever. The fact you've tied it onto the most cult film ever absolutely sickens me to my stomach. You disgust me, filmmakers. It's mad.
When did you first watch it? What was your first experience? Were you like, "Wow, Highlander's amazing. I can't believe there's a sequel"?
So, along with my gran,
brilliant.
I had a network of old people who just gave me videos they shouldn't. So Mr. Bingley over the road used to have... Mrs. Bingley would lend me... So Mavis, Auntie Mavis, we called her. She'd lend me Disney films, but Mr. Bingley would let me take whatever. So I saw all of Arnie's films because he was an absolutely Arnie fanatic. And
Wonderful.
He loved just this genre of sort of schlocky 80s action movies, which were a bit sci-fi, a bit fantasy. So he lent me Highlander. I obviously watched it 9 times back to back over a weekend. Literally, there's a few films that I can remember watching, stopping, rewinding, and watching straight away again. And Highlander was one of them. Nightmare Before Christmas, the weekend I got that. My granddad, generally I remember my granddad being in the chair. I think I was just pressing rewind for the 5th time that Saturday. And he went, No, if I have to watch that skeleton sing one more time, I'm throwing you out. Because I was that sort of kid that would be like, okay, we've watched this, let's watch it again.
My little boy is exactly the same. Yeah. If he likes something, he will rewind it and watch it again.
Yeah. So that was the thing with Highlander. I took it back and he was like, "There's a Highlander too." And I was like, "Oh."
Did he warn you?
No. Did he fuck? Just sent me out going, hey, Matt, this is pretty much the same as the last one, except you might want to keep your ear on that first voiceover because there's a few little nuggets of information you need.
I think there are worse films that are sequels than The Matrix Revolutions. That's a given. I have a particular bugbear with Jaws 3 or Jaws 3D, whatever it's being called these days.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Partly because it's awful, but also because there's a sort of sequence or extended sequences where they're, I think it's SeaWorld or a version of SeaWorld, in the sort of tunnel, and they're trapped underwater as the shark attacks. But I, for most of my sort of child and then adult life, thought that's what SeaWorld, but in particular the Sea Life Centre in Portsmouth, was like, in that when you went and visited, you just went under the sea in this tunnel and there would be fucking sharks and rays and dolphins and everything. So much so that I didn't want to go there because I'd seen Jaws and I was scared. Eventually, I was old enough to go and I went with my niece. Took her there thinking, this is going to be brilliant. We're going to go like completely under the water in the ocean. Not thinking logically as a grown man that like...
How old were you at this point? Sorry.
I would have been early 30s.
Okay, so you should have known better. Okay, just wanted to...
I absolutely should have known better. It's the equivalent of one of your parents telling you a fact as a kid that's clearly a joke, but because your brain is still forming, you just go, oh, right, yeah, that's what that... And then 20 years later or at university, you say a thing casually in the pub and everyone turns to you and goes, sorry, what? And then you explain. And then in the explanation, you realise, oh, yeah, sorry, my dad was pranking me when I was 5 years old and I've just carried that with me like my entire life. This was a sort of real world physical version of that where I took my niece in and I had hyped it up so much. I was like, it's going to be like sharks swimming past us and everything. And we walked in and it was just essentially a hallway with a fish tank above it with a few fucking tiny fish. And the look of disappointment and contempt on her face was just like, this guy's a loser. Like, what is this old guy? And before that, I'd been like the kind of cool uncle who would come down, it'd be all exciting. So I've got particular beef with Jaws 3 for that reason.
Your explanation is brilliant because I lived in Portsmouth for quite a while and I know that Sea Life Centre very well because I have a 6-year-old who's obsessed with all things sea creatures. So we have been to that Sea Life Centre quite a few times.
Yeah, it's just awful. But it's probably not awful if you haven't seen Jaws 3.
If you want a really good one, go to Dubai in their shopping mall. That's exactly what you're describing. It's like you walk through a tunnel and you're completely surrounded.
But the reason why that isn't the worst sequel for me is because it doesn't matter how bad that or any of the subsequent Jaws films, it doesn't matter how much Michael Caine tries, you can't diminish how good a film Jaws is. Yeah. Like you can watch Jaws with complete immunity because it's a masterpiece. And I feel the same way about the first Die Hard. I sort of have a bit of a soft spot for Die Hard too, but I think that's partly some kind of Stockholm syndrome of it being on telly every week for the past 25 years. But Die Hard is still brilliant. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how many 5, 6, 7, 8, or however many Bruce Willis churns out. It's just such a perfect action film. But I think the Matrix sequels, as we've touched on, they do diminish the first Matrix. I think they really, really undermine a lot of what I personally thought that film was about and what it was trying to say and how clever and smart it was. So it's hard not to sort of hate the Matrix sequels the most because they ruined a thing that I really loved prior to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Is there a point where you just, in the film, you think this is just shit?
I've seen it once and a bit. So I saw it at the cinema and I tried to watch it again probably a couple of years after it came out on DVD. I thought, all right, I'll give it another chance. Maybe I was in a bad mood. And I think probably 20 minutes into that, I was like, oh yeah, no, it's just all third act. It's this sort of big, bloated, pompous, boring mess. Like it looks great. Visually, it looks amazing because I think visually, Speed Racer looks fucking amazing, but it's just garbage. It barely makes sense, and you don't care about anyone or anything that's happening. It's kind of a cautionary tale that often I think more is less. When Trinity is willing Neo to get up at the end of that first film, like it's such an incredible moment. You're so completely invested in the characters and what they stand for and what they believe in, and the complete opposite is the case here. I just didn't care about any of it. And to go from that, the sort of 10 out of 10, completely kind of game changing. These guys have genuinely created new technology that has been built into the storytelling in such a way that's so innovative, to the feeling of deflation when I came out of that third film. I mean, that should be applauded in itself.
Is that like watching your niece like heartbreak from SeaWorld and Portsmouth?
Yes, do you know what? I experienced what she experienced, yes.
Why don't you like this film?
Because it's bad. Because I just want to say up top, I went into this movie hoping for the best. You know, I'm somebody, when I watched Man of Steel, I liked it. It has its problems, but overall, I kind of like it as a movie. I think it's all right. It definitely suffers from the Zack Snyder style over substance filmmaking, and it suffers from the trend that was at the time with superheroes of everything has to be dark and gritty, and they've got to have a dark origin, and we can't call him Superman because that's too childish. Let's call him Man of Steel. You know, and it's like, yeah, okay, fine. If you want your dark and gritty origin story for the beacon of hope that is meant to be Superman, fine. You can have that. And the movie kind of ends on that optimistic note. It ends with like, okay, we've had this now. Now he's going to go and be Superman. And so I thought, cool. All right. The second one, that's what we'll see, right? And, we're getting Batman in this movie. Fine. You know, I'm familiar with Dark Knight Returns as the inspiration. I think it's a really solid story. Yeah, let's see it on the big screen. And this movie just... I talk about misunderstanding the source material. I mean, good grief. So sticking with Superman for a second, you know, like I said, the previous movie ended... Yeah, you can sit back. I'm literally going to just rant for like an hour.
I was just going to say, this is going to be one of those ones where we don't have to say a thing.
Yeah, and I'll start talking quicker and just, out of breath, and you'll hear me smashing things, and I'll try, keep it contained. No, this first movie, so like, right, Superman, Man of Steel ends on that note of like, he's going to be Superman in the next movie, and you're like, fair enough, cool. In this film, Dawn of Justice, which... dumbass title, but I know that wasn't Snyder's fault, so I'll let him off for that. This movie, it just sends the character backwards. You know, it doesn't progress him in any way. It doesn't sort of go, okay, now he's Superman, he's Supermaning about. It pulls him back into the dark and gritty. It doesn't let Superman be Superman in this film. It just has him flying around and looking sorry for himself and like, oh, no one understands me, like some sort of teenager. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, you're wasting this character and you're wasting the actor. You know, Henry Cavill is a very charming and charismatic actor. He could be a fantastic Superman if you just let him. But this movie won't, because it has to be dark and it has to be super serious, and Superman can't be happy. And there's even a montage in this film where he saves a bunch of people and he just looks really sad, and he's like in slow motion and he's obscured, like he's this unknowable deity. And it's like, for God's sake, like he's a character. You're asking me to pick a side in a minute because these guys are going to fight. So I, as an audience member, have to invest in one of these people. It ain't going to be him because I don't know him. Because you're not letting me. You're just making him this super unlikable.
Just because you love slow-mo so much.
Yes.
He even makes Clark Kent boring.
Exactly. Yeah, he gets nothing. And I don't blame Henry Cavill for this. I just feel sorry for him. I remember watching the movie going like, oh, you poor guy. You've got nothing to do in this movie. All right, fine. I guess we're not progressing the story of him. All right.
What film sequel were you dragged to and you didn't think was good, but then you enjoyed the sequel more than the first one?
I don't know. It came to me in a second. I just what popped up. Hot Shots Part 2.
Oh, really? Yeah.
My sister what's my sister? Someone in my family wanted to see it, and I was like, I don't want to see it. It's like, it's so stupid. And oh god, it's better than the first. It's so good. Yeah, it's so great. Good. Oh, such a good Charlie Sheen.
I remember watching it on VHS at like a friend's birthday party, like Hot Shots Part 2, and like thinking like, oh, loved it, absolutely loved it. And I haven't seen the first one. I'd only seen the second one at that point.
Oh,
I just loved it.
Have you seen all the films it referenced, Rich? Because I remember a lot of that. Rambo I hadn't seen.
I get that now.
Yeah.
There's a scene when Martin Sheen's in it in Apocalypse Now boat coming towards Charlie Sheen's boat, and they both say "Loved you in Wall Street."
Wall Street,
Wall Street. I know none of those films you're referencing, but it's still hilarious.
Yeah, I don't think I got any of the references in it. I was just like, this is hilarious. And I was also in love with Valeria Golino in that movie. Like, she is beautiful in that movie.
Yeah.
I was like, I love her. That was it.
How old were you at that point? Do you remember?
I was like 9. Yeah, I was like 9 years old. I'm telling you, I went to so many things that you just like.
It was when we were younger. People were just a bit more laissez-faire about kids watching stuff. Yeah, like.
Oh, I also, I was just thinking. I think I like the scary movies, like the Marlon Wayans. I like up to Part 3. Okay. Part 2, I think, is the funniest of all three. Like, I think it's very, very funny. Because I mean, listen, I know they unfortunately started a trend, and everyone started making these spoof movies, and then you know, we've endured the pain of this. But the originators of it, you know, not really the originators, because like Airplane really like kicked it all off. It's just, by the way, one of the greatest comedies ever made.
Yep.
Airplane 2 is not. No. So it is harder to pull off a sequel. When you're in the comedy genre, I think it all becomes really difficult because it's that initial magic, and really trying to recreate it. It's hard.
Predators. There you go.
Yes.
So there's a movie. I mean, you know, it's probably an inverse situation from The Predator, where I went into The Predator hoping for something truly great because of Shane Black, who I worship, and again, I got The Predator, which is just a complete misfire, and his sensibilities just didn't mesh at all well with that franchise. You know, I know he had his battles with the studio, so that wasn't great. And but Predators, I went in expecting complete tosh, and it is tosh to an extent, but it's also really fun. And so I've seen it a number of times now, Predators. So within that franchise, I think Predators is not the most recent example, but it's one that's just popped into my head.
That's a good example, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I always think of Fast 5 when we talk about this.
Oh, yes.
Because that's a really good film. Like, it has no right to be. That's really fun. And
well, yeah, I mean, as I've said on the Empire podcast, Fast 5 is the pinnacle of human existence. And it is the point from which you can chart our ultimate decline and extinction. It all ends with Fast 5 because there's no point. We might as well have stopped. From that exact moment on. Yeah, Fast 5 is a great shout, actually, because, you know, it was a franchise that you had written off. I don't know about you guys, but certainly I'd written it off. I'm not even sure I'd seen Fast and Furious when I saw Fast 5, but I remember looking at the trailer, and the trailer ends with Paul Walker riding a car on the bonnet of a car as Vin Diesel drives it off a cliff, and I was going, this isn't what I remember this franchise being. And
they were stealing DVDs a minute ago, and now
what are they doing? This is madness. And so I went to see it, and it blew me away because it's just such a fun, effervescent, off its face action movie that
absolutely
I don't think the franchise is even, well, some people will say Fast 7 does, but I don't think the other movies since have really even come close to it.
There's that classic list of sequels that are better than, you know, the original.
What would you put in that? Aliens?
Oh, Aliens and T2, Terminator 2. That's, you know, not Godfather 2. Actually, I think I came close, but I didn't dare. I didn't dare put that as the worst sequel. I thought that would be just me being a bit up myself and a bit arch.
Wow.
Okay, I'm acceptable saying it's not as good as the first one, but you're saying you think it's not a good sequel or a good film.
I think it's boring and overblown and too long.
I do too.
It's two separate movies, and this whole thing. Yeah. Oh yeah, but the comparison between between De Niro and Pacino's characters. Like, fuck off, you know. It's just, you know, I just think it's. I don't get it. I actually, and this will. I mean, you're probably going to kick me off this podcast when I say this. I enjoyed Godfather 3 more than Godfather 2. I think Godfather 3 is one of the most wrongly maligned sequels of all time. I love that movie.
Do you know that's the answer to this question then?
Oh yeah, well there you go.
You hated the second one.
Oh yeah,
and then you watched the third one, and you're like, hey, that's better.
That's a really good. I think Godfather 3 is brilliant. The helicopter shootout when he's in the high rise thing. I think that's absolutely fantastic. That's like Die Hard meets the Mafia, and I actually think that Sofia Coppola's. I loved her performance.
Oh, come on!
No, I thought there was just because she's supposed to be this person who's just not connected in any way with the family. So I think having her doing the most complimentary way, very naturalistic style. I think that I really liked it. And I love the colours, that kind of the colorization, that kind of sepia brown kind of colouring that was through it. I thought it was great.
I've never seen Godfather 3, but I totally agree with you on 2. I found it overblown and boring and dull. And you're the first person who's ever said the same thing. Everyone always loves Godfather Part 2, but I'm so glad there's someone else in the world that thinks the same that I do.
But yet no one's picked it on this podcast yet. I gave Rich a list. I was like, these ones are going to come up quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so Aliens, Terminator 2, Godfather 2, there's Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And no one has picked Godfather 2 or Empire Strikes Back yet as their best ever sequels.
Well, I can understand it. Well, I thought you would get... Yeah, maybe because Godfather 2 is always on that list. But I'm surprised no one's done Empire.
No.
No,
so am I. Because we want to talk about that one.
Yeah.
But Pacino in the third one, you do get that classic line that I thought I was out and they dragged me back in.
Oh, goosebumps. I remember seeing that on the trailer. And that was it for me. That was just, he's, because he is the most watchable scene-chewing actor in the history of cinema.
I'm going to have to go and watch Godfather 3 now.
There's 2 versions now, Rich, because there was like a re-edit like last year or something.
Oh, okay. Oh, I must see that.
It's called the Coda edit or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So I'll be interested to see what you think of that, Dom. I haven't watched it yet either. Apparently it's a better film. What is your dream sequel?
Oh, I'm excited about
Speaking
this
about
one.
drinking wine.
Let's party!
Okay, should we try and do it together?
Okay, we're not going to do
3, 2, 1. Bridesmaids.
Bridesmaids.
We tried.
Brilliant.
Can you please sync that up in the edit so it sounds like we did it?
No.
I love that you're as coordinated as we
Talking
are.
about films that represent you, I do feel like I have a special place in my heart for Kristen Wiig's character in this.
Yeah, she
hella
is me,
relatable.
I am her. Yeah, she is me, I am her, we are one. I cannot tell you the amount of weddings I have had to go to, the weddings I have been a part of that I haven't wanted to be a part of. I can't tell you how much I hate Hindus. Just... yeah, the vibe of that whole film is so strong. And as the one of my friends who's the bit of the fuck up and earns the least money, I feel it. I feel it so deeply down inside me.
Oh dear.
We actually, even though we picked this film as our dream sequel, we have not discussed it whatsoever. So I have no idea what Daisy's dream idea of a Bridesmaid sequel is.
My theory is, right, we're getting so many... like the whole sequel thing has been going on since the dawn of time, but now we've got then we have like the reboots and the soft reboots, and now we've got the Legacy sequels. I portmanteau that in case anyone was
Legacy
sequels, and just coming hot off Jurassic World Dominion, which made me want to claw my own eyes out. I just feel like sometimes we just need to take the characters from the first one and see where they are a few years later and just let them do what they want and kind of just have the same thing happen again.
Just meet back up for the vibe.
This Bridesmaids 2 is what we should have had instead of Hangover 2 and Hangover 3, is my theory.
Hangover 2 is one of the darkest films I've ever seen. Like, I don't think we all as a society discuss how dark Hangover
considering
2
Todd
is.
Phillips directed it, I think he considered we were in a society. But no.
Just, that film, really, really
The fact
not
that
funny.
we got 3
really
Hangover
dark.
films and 1 Bridesmaid film, misogyny.
Yeah.
But no, I just feel like we've lost the funness of sequels. Everything has to be part of the cinematic universe or bring back the people from the originals just so they can pose in the same way so that everyone goes, oh, yes, I remember. Or it has to...
I get that reference.
I remember.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like...
Yeah.
Or it has to... Or it's like doing this new gritty version. No, sometimes I just want to see say characters fuck around again in a couple of different versions of the same scenes we've already seen, you know? And the perfect way to do that is just something with Bridesmaids where it literally is as simple as someone else in the group gets married. Like, no, I don't need any other information. I don't need any kind of plot. All you need to do is roll the dice on these characters. What other situations would they get in if they all had to do that all over again?
I want to see where Annie and Rhodes get married. Like, that kind of when she's the bride, when Annie's the bride.
Yeah, that's such a good shout actually, because it's slightly new and slightly different. But
that's option A, because I had two
go
options for my dream. But that's very much option A, because if you do that one, then you get the great thing that we can introduce some of Annie's other friends.
Yes.
And so that's when you bring Amy Poehler in, and that's when you bring all of those guys in, and you have a great time. And then you can bring back as many of the old cast as you can, but you don't have to bring them all back if, say, they don't want to come back.
That's a really
because
good
technically
point.
they weren't her friends. And also then, like, it would be quite funny because Annie is, like, seen as this, like, lower class kind of trashier person just because she doesn't have as much money. So, like, because the only problem with it being Annie's wedding is you have to have Rose Byrne back. It doesn't work without Rose Byrne.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to bring her into
She could
it.
be like the wedding planner or something. Like she could.
I was just gonna say that.
She could have
But then,
gone
like,
off and made her own thing.
Makes the trashiest wedding, like, really insulting,
Yeah.
but not meaning, like, you like
Really
tacos,
passive-aggressive.
just have a taco cake. And it'd be like, no.
Yeah, because it could be set up as if like they've kind of made amends now, and
they're civil.
Yeah,
they see each other at parties, at birthdays,
and like what is I'm terrible with forgetting things at the moment.
They're
but
both godmothers to the child of Maya Rudolph.
So Maya
kind of
Rudolph's
thing.
like, just give her a chance, like she'll be great, like, and they've kind of like put their things aside, and maybe there's a reason, like maybe like Annie's wedding planner like just falls through at the last minute and she's like desperate.
Annie doesn't have a wedding planner. Annie is not the kind of
That's
person that has a
very
wedding
true.
planner.
So
that
something
that
drastic
is
needs to
Maya
happen.
Rudolph's gift. No, that's Maya Rudolph's gift to
yeah.
her. I'm gifting you
Even
a wedding
better.
And she's like,
planner.
thanks.
I didn't want this.
No, I love that. Oh fuck! Why aren't they making this?
If you've ever met me or know any of my work from Skip to the End or Mark and Me, the fact it's called Mark and Me, Mac and Me too, you know, it's the film that you didn't realise you needed in your life until it's out.
Let's start from the beginning. When did you first see this? Were you in '88? Were you
No.
one of the people that saw it in the cinema?
Nope. There was only two people that saw it in the cinema, I think. And that was the wife of the director and one of the kids. It was one of the biggest flops ever. People said it was an E.T. ripoff, but I think it's the film that E.T. tried to be. Did you guys, and I'm flipping the question to you guys, have you guys seen Mac and Me until I announced I was coming on here and we was going to do this?
Nope. No. I'm aware of what the alien looked like. So when I'd seen the alien on your podcast graphics, I've seen the alien's face, Mac's face. I've like, I got a vague memory of that from way back in the histories of time. I have a vague memory of what that alien looked like, but no, I hadn't seen the film.
I kind of know of it because I'm a film nerd, so I know bad films, but I also know it from Paul Rudd on the Coen.
Oh God! Every time he goes on, he gives them the
I've got a clip of the
scene.
movie.
Yeah, and he fools them every time. I think it's about 20 times now.
But no, I've never watched it, and it's extremely hard to get. We had to watch a copy on YouTube, which wasn't full screen, Mark. It was, I would say, quarter of the screen.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite hard to watch. I mean, it was quite hard to watch in lots of ways.
Yes.
But this particular copy was quite hard to watch.
Can you at all understand why I've got a love for it in a weird, stupidy way, that it's just ridiculous, that sometimes you've got to just love the stuff that everyone else hates?
I think we've got to talk through it. I've got some questions.
All right.
I think I said to Dave, or maybe it's to my wife, I was like, sometimes there are some films that are so bad they're good. Well, I thought this one was so bad it's bad. Like it's gone past good.
This podcast was going so well. I was enjoying myself, and now we end with me crying.
So do you own it? Are you one of the guys?
I've got the DVD, which you can get available at all sort of Amazon for like $8.99. But Scream Factory have released a deluxe Blu-ray, but it's Region A locked, so I can't watch it. But
I was looking for it, 34 quid or something, the German version.
Bargain. You asked me then if I'd seen it in the 80s. I hadn't seen it until about 5 years ago. Ben brought it to Skip to the End as one of the rewatches, and we had this period where we were bringing really bad films.
I remember the Birdemic one, or Birdemic.
Birdemic was one of the first. Then he bought The Room, which I hadn't seen, Tommy Wiseau, and that changed my life. And I think I bought Troll 2.
Yeah,
and then we had
no trolls in Troll 2.
Battles. What's the John Travolta one? that's in space.
Battlefield Earth.
Yeah, and we were trying to all outdo each other as showgirls and the worst, and then suddenly Ben or one of us was like, Mac and me, and I was like, okay, let's give it a go. And I remember me, Ben and Adam, I think, sat there and watched it before the recording, and I was just in tears of laughter, like, how are they plugging McDonald's so obviously?
So
and
much
Coca-Cola,
yeah.
and it's like, talk about iRobot being bad for product placement. This is the worst I've ever seen, and like, I don't get this whole film, and I was just lost, but I was also obsessed and like infatuated with this. Like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen.
I think I came away from watching it going, I really want some Skittles.
Yeah, and a can of Coke and a Big Mac.
Turns out a can of Coke brings dead aliens back to life. Who knew?
Well, we'll come to that in a minute.
I had to make sure that it was real, that I didn't just dream what I watched, so I kind of just started it again. So I was like, did I just watch what I thought I watched?
Yeah.
I did. So and it does leave it open for a sequel. So you are...
it does.
He drives off in that pink Cadillac. They're accepted.
When you say he drives off,
well, his dad. Yeah, his dad drives off. The Mac family. They drive off, and they've been accepted to America, and they're not outsiders anymore, outcasts. They're welcome.
Quite sweet when you think of it.
It's got a big significance in today's world. We should be more like that and accepting of every alien that comes to the planet.
That first Hellboy movie, I loved the kind of Lovecraftian elements to it. It's basically just a huge Lovecraftian monster movie with all of these like Nazi elements to it, and it was a very kind of dark movie. So the way it was shot in like these muted blues and greys, and it wasn't a movie that I saw at the cinema. I actually caught it on DVD, but I loved that Hellboy movie immediately because it's very much my sort of thing, because as I said, I'm a huge nerd and I love stuff like that. And again, it's like Del Toro's world building. And he wasn't really given a great deal of creative control on that movie. And I think it shows a little bit the constraints that he had with that movie. But he had like the perfect cast in that movie because we had the legendary Ron Perlman as Hellboy.
Amen.
What a man. We've already mentioned him in Pacific Rim, and they didn't use him in Pacific Rim Uprising because they were morons. But Ron Perlman is the absolute dude. And he is Hellboy to me. He's the only person who could be Hellboy. I feel very sorry for David Harbour because there was no way that his movie could ever compete, even though that is a movie that does have some very interesting scenes and some very interesting things in it, but otherwise a bit of a mess. So going from that first Hellboy movie in 2004, we got that first Hellboy movie. And then in 2008, we got, they basically said, look, we're doing another Hellboy movie, Hellboy 2: The Golden Army. And as soon as I saw that movie, because it was so Del Toro, everything about it, you had these beautiful, it was like a stark contrast between the looks of the two movies. You went from these like dark blues and greys to this rich yellows and reds, and this beautiful world realised only the way Del Toro could realise it, where essentially it boils down to the last prince of his kind against the last prince of his kind.
Yeah.
And that is basically what The Golden Army is all about. And I have such an affection for those two movies. And then obviously when we got to the end of The Golden Army and how wonderful that movie is and how beautiful it looked and how emotional that movie was as well in so many ways, I felt like there was always a point where they were like, we're going to make a Hellboy 3. And I was like, yes, this is what I want. Give me the Hellboy 3 that I want. And so many other fans across the world were basically saying the same thing. Look, we want this Hellboy 3. When's it going to happen? And that was basically the only thing on the internet for a period of time is when is Hellboy 3 going to happen? And it was always, we're going to do it, but Guillermo del Toro is going to do this instead. And then he's going to go to this. Oh no, Ron Perlman's busy with this. Because it was, as with most movies, especially with sequels, it's a case of, right, you need to get your director, you need to get all your stars aligned, literally stars aligned. See what I did there? All of that. Everyone needs to be available and ready to work and do this movie. And obviously you want the same cast involved. You want Doug Jones because he's incredible. There is no one else who could be Abe Sapien other than Doug Jones. You need Selma Blair because you need Liz Sherman in a Hellboy 3 because she's the mother of Hellboy's twins. And then you get the twins involved. And what are the twins going to be? And there were so many possibilities for what they were going to do. And was Hellboy going to bring about the apocalypse? Or was it going to be one of his twins bringing about the apocalypse? And all of this really cool stuff. Basically, what I'm saying is, I don't know if I've told you, my dream sequel is Hellboy 3. But it has to be, I feel like I've got a roundabout way of telling you what it is, but it has to be directed by Guillermo del Toro and it has to star Ron Perlman. Because there is no other universe where Hellboy 3 would be acceptable, directed by anyone else and starring anyone else as Hellboy. Because you have to have those two elements.
And those were some of the best bits of season 3 of Unequal Sequel. That sort of worked, right?
Brilliant. Wow.
What a series. Yeah.
We're officially done now.
Considering, let's be completely honest, at the start of the series, we were like, we've run out of people we can call favours on.
Absolutely.
Like, who are we going to get as guests? And I think we've absolutely smashed it. I think they've been some of the best guests we've ever had.
I think it might be my favourite series. Just because we know what we're doing now.
Yeah, true.
Which really helps when it comes to an idea of a podcast and what we wanted to put out and how we deal with guests and stuff. So congratulations, Rich. Well done, mate. It's an absolute cracking season. Like you said, it looked iffy at the beginning, but we got there in the end.
We got there. We kicked off really strong, and I think we stayed strong all the way through.
Yeah, do you remember all the guests? Or do you want to do your
I'm going to try and remember all the guests without looking at anything.
I've got them written down, so here we go.
Okay, right, this is going to be fun.
In order as well. Let's see if we can do it.
So, of course, oh, God, I might not do it in order.
Okay.
But we kicked, because we didn't record them in order, so my brain doesn't work in that way. And also, you've got to remember, we recorded a lot of them way before we released them. So I'm trying to remember from quite some time ago.
Yeah.
Not just like the last few weeks. Anyway, we kicked off with the amazing Rich Wilson, and I was so happy to have Rich on. I really love the man. I think he's brilliant. I love his podcast. I think he's incredibly funny, and I think we were really stoked to have him on.
We had him on before Parenting Hell had him on.
Yeah, we did.
So that's pretty good.
Parenting Hell copied us.
Yeah, he was lovely. He was absolutely brilliant. I loved him.
He was completely amazing. And of course, right, I'm not going to be able to do... I'm thinking of these in the order we recorded them rather than the order they
That's
came
fine.
out, I think. Right. Okay. So the next one that comes to mind is Sarah Buddery from the Let's Jaws for a Minute podcast. Yep. I don't think she was the next one we released, but she's the next one that's in my head.
She was episode 3.
Episode 3, of course. I'm going to miss someone out, and it's going to be really embarrassing, aren't I?
Yeah.
She was amazing. Again, it was lovely to talk to Sarah and stayed completely on brand and picked loads of Jaws movies.
It was so much fun talking about Jaws movies.
It was.
And I got to watch them all. And 2 now looks like an absolute masterpiece compared to the other ones, apart from 1, obviously.
Yeah, apart from one.
Yeah.
And then we have Matthew Highton.
Episode 4.
Episode 4. Again, I'm missing people out left, right and centre.
Still missing that episode 2, but we'll get to him. No, again, hilarious, man. Brought Highlander 2 into our lives. Which
thanks
is an
for that.
Travesty. Again, makes Highlander 1 look like an absolute masterpiece, doesn't it, Rich?
Do you know what? It certainly doesn't make it look worse.
Yeah.
And of course, we had Michael Marden, talking of the Parenting Hell podcast.
Episode 5.
Yeah. It's episode 2 that's going to get me, isn't it?
Yeah.
We had, Michael Marden, the producer of the Parenting Hell podcast, and Quickly Kevin, and other bits and bobs. He's also a filmmaker and all sorts of different things as well. Very cool guy to get on.
Yeah.
And also, my own personal favourite story is that he went to America to visit the last ever Blockbuster. Incredibly impressed with that.
Yeah, that is commitment to the cause for a film fan, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we had M from Verbal Diorama.
We did. Episode 6.
I'm nearly getting them in order. It's just that episode 2 that's fallen out of my head. M from Verbal Diorama. I love M. I think she's amazing. I think she does an incredible podcast. How she does that podcast on her own.
Yeah.
It's beyond words, honestly. She's
so easy to listen to, and she's so passionate about movies. You can just sit there and listen to M talk. It was great.
You know I love Transformers, and her episode on the 1986 Transformers the movie is perfect.
It is.
Chef's kiss. Perfect. Okay. Now we're getting into crunch time. I think the next one is our first ever American guest. It's Clayton Davis.
Episode
from Variety
7.
magazine.
You're on a roll, yeah.
Oh, I'm on a roll. I mean, that was incredible. Like, recording with Clayton was absolutely incredible, right?
Yeah.
No one who listens to the podcast can see this, but when we were recording on the Zoom, he was recording it in his office, in the Variety office, and you could just see Hollywood through the window behind him.
It was very cool.
It was very cool.
Yeah, thank you for Clayton for giving us his time. He's a very busy man. We caught him just after award season, which is, I think, his downtime between award season and Cannes. That's when we got him. Fantastic stories. Yeah,
absolutely
hilarious as well. Really funny, really knowledgeable, crazy knowledgeable, to be honest.
Yeah, he was incredible. Now, I'm not sure I'm going to get these in the right order. I think Harley from Fundamentals.
That's episode 9. You missed episode 8 out, but Harley was wonderful.
Yeah, Harley was amazing. Fundamentals podcast. We've both been on it a couple of times now, haven't we? We did a Star Wars special, and we did a podcast all about podcasts, which was pretty nice.
Because that's my life now.
Yeah, so go back and listen to Fundamentals if you haven't done already.
Loved his rant on Dawn of Justice. I think it's one of my favourites.
It definitely is. And of course, we had the amazing Ashanti Omkar as well.
Episode 10, yep.
I really loved Ashanti. I could have talked to her all day, and I think that if we'd met in real life, we'd be really good friends. I think she's incredible.
Yeah, I think she's wonderful. And we got to watch Sex and the City 2. There's
did
a purpose.
Get to watch Sex and the City 2.
So that was brilliant. And I think she had a really good time. We had a really good time with her. Yeah, again, knowledgeable, crazy, passionate about movies. All we can ask, really. Good stories, good picks.
Just a wonderful person. Just a really nice person.
Oh, we had a lovely chat. It went on for hours.
It did, yeah. We chatted for ages after the podcast had finished. Yeah. Okay. Next up, I think we've got Dominik Diamond.
Well, that was episode 8.
Ah, okay.
Wow.
I mean, it's not often that me and you get starstruck, properly starstruck. But honestly, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old me would probably have pooped his pants at the prospect of talking to Dominik Diamond.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
And I've got to be honest, 41-year-old me wasn't far off.
It was like a ball of fire, like energy that Dom was. You don't know what to go in when you're having these interviews, and luckily all our interviews have gone pretty well. But this one was electric. It was so much fun. I don't think I stopped laughing for like an hour and a half. He absolutely brought the A game. He was amazing. His picks are great.
Yeah,
didn't disappoint.
So good. Really, really brilliant guy. And again, if you listen to that episode and you like it, then make sure you go and listen to all Dom's stuff and read his articles and things. And there's links in the show notes for that one.
Yeah.
So make sure you go and check those out. Okay, so then we must be on to W-Rated.
You've only got 3 more episodes to think about. Yeah, W-Rated.
Yeah.
It was
Clare
so much fun, wasn't
it? I mean, they're essentially sort of the female versions of us, I think, in podcasting terms. I think they're amazing. I love their podcast. I think they are incredibly brave for doing what they do, because me and you know what it's like to like watch bad stuff all the time and then talk about it. It can get to you.
I love their chemistry and their energy. And that was, I would say, out of all the episodes this season, that's the one that kind of went off the rails.
Oh, definitely. And I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's perfect. It was just crazy fun. It was so much fun. Horrible to edit. But yeah,
we do like to set these challenges for you, Dave. It is nice to have like a 4-person episode every now and then, just to give you a bit of a challenge.
We'll try and do it every season, I think.
Yeah, I think so. That'd be nice. And also, we finished the season with Chris Hewitt.
Wow,
how good is that?
How did we get him?
Empire Magazine, host of the Empire Film Podcast. I mean, he's a big name, right?
He's a legend, isn't he? He's one of the reasons I'm podcasting.
He is a superhero. Yeah, absolutely.
He's brilliant. His knowledge, again, picks were great. Finally got to talk about Evil Dead 2, hear about his we actually got to talk about Attack of the Clones review, which I wasn't going to bring up, but he kind of mentioned it, and then I jumped upon it.
Yeah,
because that's what good interviews do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And he was game for it, which was even better. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for closing our season. It was great.
Now, this is really embarrassing because I'm going to have to go back to episode 2.
Yeah.
And I can't remember.
It was one
episode 2.
We've been trying to get for a long time, all last year. We had to watch the worst ever dream sequel ever.
Of course, it's Mark Woodyatt, isn't it?
The legend that is Mark Woodyatt.
How did I forget Mark Woodyatt? That's insane. So Mark from Mark and Me podcast, and you may remember him from the Skip to the End podcast. Incredible podcaster, and I can't believe that I missed him out. And the fact that we had to watch Mac and Me, that should have stuck in my head forever, shouldn't it, really? What a load of rubbish.
Again, a conversation that went on for like 2 hours, and I had to cut it down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Again, in terms of podcasting, he's an absolute legend. The other day he had Bruce Campbell on. The names he gets in his podcast are incredible. He does it all himself. I think he's the hardest working man there is in podcasting, and we tried to get Mark on for a long time, first 2 seasons, but it didn't quite happen the first 2 seasons, and we finally got to nail him down, and then he came on and he brought it, and it was brilliant. What a season.
And I can't believe I forgot Mark. He was so good as well.
Well, there's a lot to remember.
There was, but I got all the rest.
Yeah, you did.
You know, that's fine. Did all right. What? I can't believe season 3's done already.
I know. And what's the plan for next season? We go again.
We just go again. Well, we've already started, haven't we?
Oh yeah, we recorded an episode.
We've not even had our end of season pub trip to plan the next season, and we've already recorded an episode for season 4.
Yep. And what we got planned, and what can you tell them about season 4 in the future, Rich?
Well, I think what you can look forward to is more interactive stuff with us, potentially.
Hopefully.
So
if we get our arse in gear.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll be looking at some Patreon stuff.
Yeah.
So people can join in, and some sort of fan interaction stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to steal all the best bits from all the other podcasts we like.
Absolutely.
And copy what they do, because, you know, that's the kind of guys we are. And yeah, just general kind of, we'll still be doing our extra episodes. Don't worry, we're not going to put those onto Patreon. We're still going to let you have those ones for free. We'll still do our monthly roundup, so we'll still talk about all the interactions that we've had with you guys. And I think, you know, it's just more of the same. More of the same in season 4.
I have to reiterate, we're not putting the Unequal sequel interview episodes on Patreon either. They'll be there. There'll just be more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what about this website you've been promising since
I know, right?
End of season 2?
Turns out I'm not very good at making websites. It's taken me a long time, but it will 100% launch for series 4.
I don't believe it.
I promise. Look, 1, I've been really ill, and I've not been able to concentrate on stuff. And 2, it's a lot harder than I thought it was.
I know. I don't get it. So good on you for having a crack on it.
I don't know. It might look awful, but hey, there we go.
Yeah, and we should be back at the end of September. It might be a bit later because I've got to go to Canada for 2 and a bit weeks. So that will push us back a bit.
Hopefully we can do things before you go to Canada and get them
that's only a couple of weeks, Rich. So yeah.
Yeah.
What can you tell the people about getting in contact?
Well, you can still contact us on Twitter and on Instagram and also on email. So we're at Unequal Sequel on the socials and unequalsequel@hotmail.com on the emails. You're still going to be doing our extra episodes just because the season is finished. We're still going to be carrying on doing content. Maybe even do some content with Dave from Canada. All the way from Canada, potentially.
Please, it's going to be so hard. Actually, they're going to have aircon. Maybe.
Okay, we'll see. But yeah, if you want to get in touch, that's the way to do it. Of course, if you like what you've heard, if you thought season 3 has been as brilliant as we thought it's been, then click on those little likes, click on the subscribe button, give us a rating. Write us a review if you like.
Love a reviews.
We do love a review. Even if you give us a 5-star review and then rubbish us in the actual comments, that's fine, that's okay.
Yeah, I can live with that.
You know, the 5-star reviews like bump us up the table a bit, which is always nice and gets more people to listen. But the best thing you can do for us is just tell your friends. just tell other people, spread the words. And we've seen a load of you kind of doing that on social media, and we really appreciate it. Spreading the word about us, we love you for it, honestly.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of it. It feels a bit like, whew, yeah.
I know, man. It's a crazy 12 weeks. It's hard work, but it's so much worth it. I absolutely love it. I love talking to everyone this season. Thank you all for our guests for coming on. You've been amazing. Again, thank you for everyone that's downloaded. We've got a lot of new listeners this season, thanks to a little plug on the end of Parenting Hell. That was a good week.
That was a good week.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I normally sign out with a fancy bye-bye, but not this week. Just a sincere thank you. And it's a bye-bye from me. And it's a bye-bye from him.
Bye!
See you next season. Thank you so much. Bye.